She wasn't a witch. Rope fibers already bit into Ella's neck. The crowd's roar swelled in Cole's ears as the trap creaked under her boots. They were seconds from killing an innocent woman for a lie. Cole steadied his revolver at the noose above her, sweat burning his eyes. A dozen rifles cocked in response, their metallic clacks audible over the howling wind. He smelled gunpowder and panic in the night air. Time slowed as the sheriff sneered and raised his hand to signal her hanging. Cole had one shot to sever that rope and maybe save her life. Bitterweed Flats glowed under a blood-red sunset. Cole slowed his horse as he entered the dusty main street, eyes scanning for trouble. In the town square ahead, two men were hammering thick boards into a makeshift gallows. Within seconds, the reformed outlaw sensed a tangible dread on the wind. A noose dangled from the fresh beam, a promise of death by midnight. Cole dismounted in front of the saloon, boots hitting dirt. The smell of spilt beer and kerosene lamps wafted from the swinging doors. Inside, a tinny piano tune faltered as locals cast hard stares at the stranger. He'd ridden hard for hours to get here after an urgent telegram from an old friend. A woman's life hung in the balance, literally. "They're hanging the witch tonight," muttered one cowhand at the bar. Cole's jaw tightened. There was that word, witch. He approached the bar, spurs jangling in the tense hush. "Evening," he rasped, voice low. The barkeep polished a glass, faint and calm, but sweat gleamed on his brow. "Heard something about a hanging," Cole said. "What did she do?" In reply, the bartender jerked his head toward a notice tacked crookedly on the wall. Cole stepped closer to read by the flickering lantern light. "Witchcraft," it declared. "Ella Byrne, to be hanged at midnight by order of Sheriff Beaumont." Cole felt a knot in his gut. He knew Ella. Months ago, this kind-hearted woman had saved his life on a lonely night with her herbs and care. Now they called her a sorceress. A sudden crash shattered the silence. A drunk patron knocked over a chair. Cole didn't flinch, but his hand grazed the iron at his hip. The clock above the bar read 6:15 p.m. Less than 6 hours to save her. He turned on his heel, determination set. But a heavy figure blocked the saloon exit. A burly deputy glared down at Cole, one hand on his revolver. "We don't like outsiders asking questions," the man growled through the tobacco stench on his breath. The tension exploded as the deputy's other hand shot out to grab Cole's shoulder. Cole moved on instinct. Subscribe for more high-stakes Western tales. The saloon's doors burst open as Cole slammed the deputy through them and onto the moonlit street. Wood splintered on impact. The brute scrambled up with a snarl, drawing his gun. Cole was faster. A crack rang out as he shot the revolver clean from the deputy's hand. The thunder of the gunshot echoed down Main Street. For a moment, nothing but the deputy's pained howl and the ringing in Cole's ears disturbed the night. Cole's heartbeat thudded like a war drum. He'd won this round, but the commotion had surely alerted others. A hushed whistle sounded from a nearby alley. Cole pivoted, gun still smoking. In the dim light, an older man beckoned frantically from behind a rain barrel. "This way, son," the stranger hissed. Cole recognized the etched face immediately. Jameson, his old Pinkerton mentor. Relieved, Cole tipped his hat and slipped into the alley's shadows. Behind them, lamps were flickering on in windows. The sheriff's men would be swarming soon. Jameson led Cole through a maze of back streets that smelled of stale smoke and horse manure. They ducked into a quiet stable behind the church. Hay and leather scented the cool air. Safe for the moment, Cole turned to his mentor. "Thanks," he murmured. Jameson gave a gruff nod. Though retirement had stooped his shoulders, his eyes were still keen under his gray-brimmed hat. Cole recalled riding with him years ago, back when they wore the badge emblazoned with an unblinking eye, the Pinkerton's "We Never Sleep" emblem. That life felt like ages past. Cole's old Pinkerton badge still rested in his duster pocket, emblazoned with the unblinking eye logo and motto, "We Never Sleep." He and Jameson had once tracked outlaws from Jesse James to Butch Cassidy across the frontier. But no posse was coming to help them tonight. "I figured you'd come," Jameson said in a low voice. "Got my wire." Cole nodded. "What in blazes is happening here? Ella's no witch." Jameson spat in the straw, face grim. "Sheriff Beaumont's riled folks up good. Few sick cows, a bad storm, and the mayor's boy died of fever last week under her care. They needed someone to blame." He paused as thunder rumbled overhead, a storm gathering. All it took were 3 or 4 neighbors spreading rumors to seal her fate. Beaumont declared her a witch to cover his own failings. Cole's fists clenched. He remembered Ella mixing feverfew and willow bark for that boy night after night. She'd tried to save him. "Sheriff's hiding something," Jameson continued. "Ella was getting popular with her remedies. Maybe cutting into Doc Miller's business, or maybe she just turned down Beaumont's advances. Either way, this witchcraft charge is a lie." A slender figure stepped from the shadows. Father Thomas, the town priest, worry etched on his face. He had been quietly listening. Thomas was one of the few who dared speak for Ella. "Mob's gone mad with fear," he whispered. "You can't fight the whole town, Cole. We need proof of her innocence or an escape plan, fast." His calm voice was the voice of reason the younger man needed to hear. Cole's jaw set. "We get her out first, expose the lie after." Jameson patted the revolver at his side, old instincts firing. "Jail's on the next street. 1 guard this time of night." Rain started to patter on the roof, the smell of wet dust rising. Thomas held up a key. "I persuaded the guard to lend me this, briefly," the priest said, revealing he had already been working to free her. Cole cracked a rare grin. They had a chance. Lightning flashed, illuminating their determined faces. The tower clock struck 7 p.m. 5 hours left. Cole checked his gun and took a breath. "Let's go get her." Together, they slipped back into the stormy night, toward the jail where Ella waited. Could they reach her before superstition and time ran out? Rain drummed on the tin roof of the small jailhouse. Cole, Jameson, and Father Thomas crept along its side wall, cloaked in darkness. Through the barred window, Cole glimpsed Ella curled on the cell's cot, her auburn hair matted and her hands bound. A single lantern cast flickering light inside. The lone guard dozed in a chair by the door, his snores competing with the storm's hum. Thunder boomed in the distance as Cole slipped the key Thomas procured into the jail's back door. The rusty lock clicked. Cole winced at the squeak of hinges, but the guard's snoring continued unabated. Inside, the air reeked of damp straw and unwashed fear. Ella stirred at the noise, looking up with wide eyes as Cole appeared outside her cell. "Cole," she whispered, voice cracking. Recognition and disbelief washed over her dirt-streaked face. Cole managed a faint smile. "I'm here to get you out." Another thunderclap masked the sound as Jameson picked the cell lock with a slim piece of metal, a trick from his Pinkerton days. In seconds, the door swung open. Ella rushed forward, tears mingling with the rainwater dripping from the ceiling. The scent of lavender clung faintly to her, recalling the night she'd tended Cole's bullet wound by lamplight months ago. He had a flash of that memory, her gentle hands pressing a poultice to his ribs, the sound of her humming a calming hymn in the dark, a brief flicker of warmth amid the present terror. Cole cut her ties. "You shouldn't have come," she breathed, voice trembling. Outside, Father Thomas kept watch while the others huddled close. "No way I'd leave you here, Ella," Cole replied softly. She nodded, swallowing hard. The moment was broken by a harsh snort from the guard stirring. Jameson crept behind the guard and clamped a hand over the man's mouth, pressing his revolver to his temple. "Quiet," he growled. The guard's eyes went wide as saucers. He nodded frantically. In the dim light, Father Thomas gently took the man's pistol and motioned Jameson to release him. "Stay calm, and no one gets hurt," the priest whispered. The guard, shaking, stayed silent. With Ella free, they moved toward the rear exit. Lightning flashed, illuminating the office briefly. In that split second, Ella saw a document on the sheriff's desk, a ledger page with her name. She paused, heart pounding, and snatched it up. "Evidence," she murmured, tucking the paper into her dress. Cole glanced at the sleeping town beyond the door. Time to move. They slipped into the rain-soaked alley behind the jail. Cool, wet air hit their faces as Jameson carefully shut the door. Ella gasped at the taste of freedom, even under the downpour. The church bell tolled 8 times in the distance. 8 p.m. 4 hours left. "This way," Cole urged, wrapping a supportive arm around Ella. She was weak but determined, her bare feet splashing in the mud. Suddenly, a rifle shot cracked through the night, splintering wood inches from Cole's head. They all dove for cover as sparks flew, the acrid scent of gunpowder mixing with ozone. "Hold it right there," barked a voice over the hiss of rain. Sheriff Beaumont stepped forward, flanked by half a dozen armed townsmen and the hulking deputy with a bandaged hand. The sheriff's cold eyes gleamed in the lantern light. A predatory grin split his face as he raised his shotgun at the huddled fugitives. They had walked straight into his ambush. Cole's pulse pounded. Mud and rain spattered his face as he shielded Ella behind him. Jameson's jaw tightened as he aimed his pistol, but guns gleamed from every angle. Father Thomas held up his hands, praying under his breath. They were surrounded. Beaumont spat tobacco into the mud. "Thought you'd outsmart me, huh?" he snarled. "End of the line." A bolt of lightning cracked violently overhead, casting the sheriff's shadow long and distorted against the alley wall. "Drop your weapons or the next shot drops you," Beaumont growled. Cole's revolver weighed heavy in his hand. Ella squeezed his arm, terrified. Outnumbered and cornered, Cole slowly loosened his grip, letting his pistol fall with a dull thud into the mud. Jameson followed suit, fury in his eyes but understanding the odds. The sheriff's men closed in, cocking hammers, eager for blood. Beaumont stepped closer, rain streaming off his wide-brimmed hat. "Bring the witch," he ordered curtly. 2 men seized Ella, tearing her from Cole's side despite her cry of protest. Cole surged forward instinctively, only to be met by the butt of Beaumont's shotgun driving hard into his stomach. The air rushed from his lungs. He doubled over in the muck, coughing at the taste of copper in his mouth. Ella screamed, a sound that pierced through the storm. The sheriff leaned down as Cole knelt in pain. "You just couldn't leave well enough alone, could you, Pinkerton?" He sneered the word like a curse. "Now you'll hang too, right beside your witch." Cole's vision blurred with pain and rage as the church bell finished its 8th toll. Rain battered the helpless group. Sheriff Beaumont straightened and tipped his head to his men. "Lock 'em up. We'll have a double hanging come midnight." The clock was still ticking, but now escape had slipped through their fingers. As the deputies dragged Cole and his allies away, one question throbbed in his mind. How, in God's name, were they going to get out of this alive? The hours crept by until nearly midnight. Wind snarled through Bitterweed's main street as a grim procession made its way to the gallows. Sheriff Beaumont led the way, lantern in hand. Townsfolk with flickering torches gathered despite the rain, their faces ghastly in the wavering light. Cole, wrists bound, was shoved forward by the deputy's beefy grip. Ella stumbled beside him, barefoot and shivering in her thin dress. Jameson and Father Thomas followed, flanked by gunmen. The crowd's murmurs swelled, hunger for punishment mixing with uncertainty. The scent of torch smoke and wet leather hung heavy in the air. On the wooden scaffold, 2 nooses swayed in the storm breeze. Cole scanned the mob under his dripping hat brim, desperate for any sign of help or hesitation. He saw fear in many eyes, but also a sick curiosity. Lightning forked overhead, eliciting gasps. From somewhere in the throng, a bottle shattered. An old woman's voice cackled, "String up the witch and her devils." Beaumont raised a hand to quiet the crowd. "Tonight, justice shall be served." He barked over the wind. Rain slicked off his coat as thunder groaned. "Ella Byrne has confessed to consorting with darkness, bringing sickness to our town." Ella's head snapped up. "That's a lie." She cried out, voice raw. The sheriff ignored her. "And this," he gestured at Cole, "is the outsider who thought he'd cheat our law. A Pinkerton spy or worse, a murderer on the run." A ripple of unease passed through the crowd. Cole's blood boiled at the blatant falsehoods, but a rifle muzzle in his back kept him silent. Father Thomas stepped forward, hands raised to placate. "Brothers, sisters, this isn't right," he implored, rain pouring down his lined face. "There has been no trial, only fear. I beg you." His plea was cut short by a rough hand yanking him back. The voice of reason was lost in the storm as the mob roared for vengeance. Beaumont motioned to the hangman, who waited with face obscured by a soaked hood. The hangman tightened Ella's noose around her delicate neck. She winced as the coarse rope scraped her skin. Cole felt a surge of icy panic. Bound as he was, he edged closer to her. "Ella, whatever happens, don't lose hope," he whispered. She met his eyes, tears mingling with rain on her cheeks. "Cole, I'm so sorry," she choked. He shook his head fiercely. "This isn't over." Jameson, standing just behind, subtly worked his wrists against his bindings. The old mentor's eyes were on Beaumont, calculating. Cole caught a glimpse of a small blade slipping from Jameson's sleeve, slicing his rope. Jameson had one last trick ready. The sheriff unrolled a parchment and began droning some perfunctory decree. Cole's heart hammered as he strained at his own knots behind his back. Almost there. A few strands snapped. His wrists bled as he forced them apart inch by inch. Nearby, Jameson had freed his hands entirely under the cover of darkness. He inched a hidden derringer from his boot. "By the power vested in me as sheriff," Beaumont thundered, "I hereby sentence these sinners to hang by the neck until dead. May God have mercy on their souls." He nodded to the hangman. Time slowed to a crawl. The hangman moved to pull the lever beneath Ella's feet. Cole saw Jameson's arm tense, ready to act. Thunder rumbled like a drum roll. Suddenly, Jameson lunged. Boom! A muzzle flash erupted as the old Pinkerton's derringer fired. The hangman cried out and staggered, clutching his shoulder. The bullet meant for Beaumont had struck the executioner instead. Chaos ignited. Beaumont cursed and stumbled back, momentarily stunned. Seizing the moment, Jameson roared, "Now, Cole!" Cole burst his remaining bonds and dove toward Ella. The deputy lunged at him, but a stray torch had dropped, and in its glow Jameson swung his pistol like a club into the deputy's jaw. Bone cracked. The brute toppled off the platform with a howl, disappearing into the mud below. Cole scrambled to Ella's side as the crowd erupted in screams. With trembling hands, he lifted the noose off her neck. Her breath came in sobs of relief. Up on the scaffold, Father Thomas tackled another deputy who was leveling a rifle, sending the shot wild into the sky. The townsfolk scattered or watched in stunned silence as the carefully staged execution unraveled into a brawl. Sheriff Beaumont regained his wits with murderous fury in his eyes. He cocked his shotgun at Jameson, who now stood between the sheriff and the freed prisoners. "Traitor!" Beaumont snarled. Before Beaumont could fire, Jameson threw himself at the sheriff. The shotgun blast thundered wide, pellets shredding the night air. The old mentor grappled with Beaumont, shouting, "Run, Cole!" Cole didn't hesitate. He grabbed Ella's hand. She gasped as he pulled her toward the stairs, but she resisted, tugging back. "Jameson!" Cole whirled to see Beaumont wrest free and aim his barrel down at the struggling older man. Blam! The shotgun roared. Jameson jerked, the fire in his eyes dimming as he collapsed to the planks. "No!" Cole shouted, voice ripping from his throat. Beaumont racked the shotgun again, rain and sweat plastering his face. Cole pushed Ella behind him and reached for a fallen revolver on the platform. The deputy's gun, Jameson, had knocked loose. His fingers closed around the cold metal. Beaumont snarled, swinging his weapon toward Cole and Ella for a final shot. Lightning split the sky at that instant. Cole leveled the revolver, hands steady as the world spun into stark clarity. He had one chance. Ella's life, everyone's lives, hung in the balance like the ticking seconds before dawn. Beaumont's finger tightened on his trigger. A single gunshot cracked like judgment across the square. The clock tower began to toll midnight as Sheriff Beaumont crumpled to the ground. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Sheriff Beaumont lay sprawled in the mud at the foot of the gallows, a dark red stain spreading on his chest. Cole remained in a shooter's stance, arm outstretched, barrel smoking in the first light of dawn. He had fired true. Beaumont's shotgun slipped from the dead man's fingers as the final bell stroke faded. Townspeople peeked out from their cover, shock and rain washing over their faces. The brutal tyrant who had terrorized them was no more. Ella, chest heaving, fell into Cole's arms and sobbed. He held her tight, feeling her warmth through the cold rain. "It's over," he whispered, unsure if he was reassuring her or himself. Father Thomas limped to the scaffold railing, raising a hand shakily. The witchcraft was a lie. "Look at your sheriff," he cried to the gathering crowd. Ella gently pulled the damp ledger page from her dress. "He wrote this," she said, voice hoarse but clear. Thomas took the page and held it high. Sheriff Beaumont conspired to accuse an innocent woman. Here, his ledger shows payments to false witnesses, his own notes calling it a necessary lie to calm the town. A murmur rippled through the onlookers. Faces that moments ago thirsted for blood now stared at the ground in shame and relief. The dark spell of fear was broken. Cole sank to his knees beside Jameson. The old mentor lay motionless on the gallows boards, rain pelting his vacant stare. Gently, Cole closed Jameson's eyes with trembling fingers. "Thank you," he murmured, voice thick. The man who had been like a father to him was gone, trading his life for theirs. A tear mingled with the raindrops on Cole's cheek. Around them, the last of Beaumont's deputies tossed their guns aside, unwilling to continue the fight. A few townsfolk rushed to untie the prisoners completely and help Father Thomas down the steps. No one cheered. The only sounds were the patter of rain and the soft sobbing of a town coming to its senses. Ella knelt next to Cole and Jameson's body, resting a gentle hand on Cole's shoulder. He looked at her, eyes full of sorrow. "He saved us," Ella whispered, voice broken. Cole nodded, swallowing hard. Lantern light and the first rays of dawn revealed the weary lines on his face. He had saved Ella and stopped the hanging, but at great cost. As the sky paled, a tentative sunbeam peeked through the dispersing storm clouds. A ragged cheer finally went up when someone yelled, "Ella's free!" A few townsfolk approached, apologetic and repentant. Doc Miller, pale with guilt, stammered an apology to Ella for ever doubting her. The mayor, hat in hand, pledged to set things right. Ella offered a forgiving nod, though pain lingered in her eyes. She knew fear, not truth, had ruled them. Cole stood slowly, Ella steadying him. He felt the ache of bruises and the weight of loss. Yet, in this moment, a fragile peace settled over Bitterweed Flats. The nightmare was ending. He looked to the east, where the clouds were turning gold and pink with the coming sunrise. A new day. Ella slipped her hand into his. Cole managed a small, weary smile at her, gratitude and affection passing between them wordlessly. Around them, townspeople began to gather the wounded and douse the remaining torches, faces somber but hopeful. Father Thomas led a prayer of thanks, his voice carrying softly through the damp morning air. Cole took a long breath, the scent of rain and churned earth filling his lungs. Sheriff Beaumont's lie was laid bare, and the external fight was won. But as he gazed down at Jameson's lifeless form, he felt a hollow ache. He had come here seeking justice and redemption. Both had been delivered, yet his heart felt far from at ease. Too much blood had been spilled to reach the truth. He squeezed Ella's hand gently. They would bury Jameson in the town cemetery with proper honors. The innocent would heal, and Bitterweed Flats would remember the price of its fear. Cole had done what was right, but the line between justice and vengeance still cut deep inside him. The wind had stilled to a hush as dawn light spread across the silent gallows. The hardest battles, Cole knew, were fought within. Suddenly, a slow clap echoed from the edge of the dispersing crowd. Cole snapped his head up, every nerve on edge. From behind, a water trough, stepped a lean figure in a long duster. He held a revolver casually at his side. Townsfolk scattered back, uncertain if this was yet another threat. A black bandana covered the lower half of the man's face, dripping with rain. "Bravo," the stranger drawled, voice cutting through the quiet. "Hell of a show, Cole." Cole's blood ran cold at the familiarity in that voice. "Who?" The man lifted the bandana from his face. In the gray morning light, Cole recognized the scar slashing across the man's cheek and the wild, hate-filled eyes. It was Dawson Reed, once as close as a brother back in Cole's outlaw days. Years ago, Cole had left him for dead in a botched robbery, and Dawson had not forgotten. Silence fell over the rain-soaked square. Beaumont lay motionless in the mud. The sheriff's reign ended. Townsfolk peered from behind barrels and broken windows, stunned by the turn of events. Cole stood on the gallows platform, chest heaving, Ella clutching his arm. Father Thomas knelt over Jameson's still form, closing his old friend's eyes with a trembling prayer. The first hint of dawn lightened the storm clouds overhead. A slow clap echoed from the shadows beyond the lantern light. Cole snapped his head up, every muscle tensed. From behind a water trough stepped a lean figure in a long duster. He held a revolver loosely at his side. A black bandana covered the lower half of his face, dripping with rain. "Bravo," the stranger drawled, voice dripping with mocking calm. "Hell of a show, Cole." Cole's stomach dropped at the familiarity of that voice. "Dawson," he breathed. The man hooked a thumb under his bandana and lifted it, revealing a gaunt face marked by a jagged scar. In the weak dawn light, Cole saw the cold fury in the man's eyes. It was Dawson Reed, a comrade turned ghost from his past. "Surprised to see me," Dawson hissed, stepping forward. Father Thomas rose slowly, placing himself between the newcomer and the exhausted pair on the scaffold. Dawson immediately leveled his gun at the priest. Father, stay out of this," he warned. Thomas froze, hands partially raised. Ella gripped Cole's arm. "Cole, who is that?" she whispered. "A ghost," Cole answered hoarsely. Regret and shock churned in his gut. Dawson's lip curled in a bitter smile. "You'd know about ghosts, wouldn't you, partner? I've been following you for a long time. Thought I'd let that fool Beaumont soften you up, but you're a hard man to kill." He spat rainwater. "So, I reckon I'll finish the job myself." Cole gently pushed Ella behind him, every muscle screaming in protest at this new peril. "Dawson, it doesn't have to go like this," he called out over the patter of rain. His voice was steady, but sorrow underlay it. "I'm sorry for what happened. I never meant for me to rot in Yuma prison while you played hero." Dawson snapped, eyes blazing. "For Lily to die alone." Cole's face paled as if struck. Dawson's sister Lily, Cole's first love, had died of fever while Dawson languished behind bars and Cole vanished to join the Pinkertons. Guilt knifed through Cole anew, raw and sharp. Dawson circled slowly, his revolver unwaveringly trained on Cole. The townspeople watched from a distance, terrified by this new standoff. "You got a lot of folks fooled tonight, hero," Dawson sneered. "Maybe you even fooled yourself that you've changed, but we both know the blood on your hands never washes off." Cole felt Ella's hand squeeze his. Rain dripped from his hat brim into his eyes as he faced the man he once called brother. "You want revenge," Cole said quietly. "I won't fight you." Moving with slow resolve, he unhooked his gun belt and let his revolver drop to the platform with a soggy thud. He raised his hands, empty. A collective gasp rippled through those watching. Ella's eyes went wide. "Cole, no." Dawson barked a harsh laugh. "Look at this. The great gunslinger grows a conscience at the end." He mounted the scaffold steps, closing the distance until the muzzle of his revolver was inches from Cole's chest. "Too late for redemption, Cole." Cole's heart thudded against his ribs. He met Dawson's furious gaze without flinching. "If this is what you need to do, I won't stop you," he said, voice low and steady. "I won't draw." A flicker of confusion crossed Dawson's face. His finger trembled on the trigger. This wasn't the climax of hate he'd imagined. Cole refused to play along. "Fight back, damn you!" Dawson roared, pressing the gun to Cole's chest. "Draw!" Thunder rumbled in the distance. Cole stood still, hands at his sides. "No," he replied softly. Beside him, Ella stood trembling, tears in her eyes as she watched the two men. Father Thomas held his breath, poised to intervene if fate offered a chance. For an agonizing moment, Dawson Reed's eyes wavered, conflict flickering in them. Rain cascaded off the brim of his hat. His life had been consumed by vengeance, and now its object refused to give him the satisfaction. A snarl twisted his features and he pulled the trigger. Nothing happened. A misfire. The hammer struck, but the cartridge gave only a dull click. Both men stared in surprise. Dawson blinked, momentarily thrown off by the cruel whim of fate. Cole exhaled shakily, scarcely believing Providence had spared him. An uneasy murmur swept through the onlookers. With a frustrated growl, Dawson stepped back and cocked the hammer again. But in that split second, a figure moved at the edge of Cole's vision. Father Thomas lunged between the two men, arms outstretched. No more blood. The priest cried. Dawson's second shot rang out sharply. Father Thomas gasped, stumbling as a red stain blossomed on his shoulder. The brave clergyman collapsed onto the platform, wounded but alive. In that instant, Cole exploded into motion. He crashed into Dawson, tackling him to the planks hard. The revolver flew from Dawson's grip as both men grappled in the slippery rain, months of anger unleashed in a flurry of blows. Dawson fought like a man possessed, but Cole's strength was fueled by desperation to end this without more death. At last, Cole slammed Dawson's back against a post and pinned him, forearm pressed to his former friend's throat. Dawson, chest heaving, still sneered through the pain. "Go on," he rasped, eyes burning with deranged fury. "Do it. You know you want to." Cole's knuckles were bloodied, his breaths ragged. Nearby, Ella pressed a cloth to Father Thomas's shoulder as the injured priest grimaced in pain. Cole looked into Dawson's eyes, seeing years of bitterness, betrayal, and the dark mirror of his own sins. His arm trembled. Rain ran down both their faces as Dawson's words hung in the air. Slowly, Cole eased the pressure on Dawson's neck and stepped back, hauling the defeated man up by the collar. "No," Cole said, voice firm and clear. "I won't kill you, Dawson." The fire in Dawson's expression guttered, replaced by confusion and a glimmer of something like relief. By now, two townsmen had found the courage to approach. They retrieved Dawson's fallen revolver and moved in to restrain him. Fight gone, the outlaw hung his head as they pulled his arms behind him. The false witch was saved. The cruel sheriff was dead. Yet Cole felt no triumph. His eyes drifted to Jameson's lifeless form, to Father Thomas breathing through the pain of his wound, and finally to Dawson, defeated and hollow. The truth had won tonight, but at a price etched in blood and memory. As dawn broke fully over Bitterweed Flats, golden light spilling onto the wreckage of the Gallows, Cole stood drenched and drained, staring into the new day with a heart as heavy as lead. The external battle was over, but inside, he knew the war with his own demons raged on. By sunrise, Ella was free, and the town's dark lie lay exposed. Cole had won the outward battle, but not the one within. A man may escape the noose, but not his conscience. Subscribe to join our next ride into the West.